Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. This is Dave Emmons and the Strange Reality. Not so much strange today, and I was just talking to my guest pre-show, in which I usually do, to get to know them a little bit and find out what their limitations are, what they don't want to talk about. And I know there's certain topics I don't want to talk about either, and to bring them up. But I have topics all over the place, and most of you people who follow me on Facebook, I appreciate the following and the views, and I get involved in ghost, ET, spirituality, consciousness, and any topic really. I don't get involved in the politics. I get involved in world problems, but not the politics. But I do want to send out a prayer to the people in Florida and North Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia. They're still going through a rough time, and I hope everybody gets together and helps them out. And may God bless them. And on this show, The Strange Reality, we are for the people to be enlightened and to know the truth about things. And I like to bring people on that are very, I guess, very keen and sharp in what they're talking about. And I got this gentleman here. I'll show this. Well, we're going to show a couple of videos. It's Bill Mullin. He was a musician, and I'm a musician. He was a drummer, and he was with the band, and they actually made an album. And I didn't do that, but we got close to it. Here's another one here, Front Gate Podcast Tours, and that's what he's involved in now. He's doing tours on podcasts. And Bill Mullin, we've been we hit it off really good. Any musician that comes on my show, I mean, I love it. Because we there is a connection, and it's a spiritual one. Music is energy, it's frequency, and I know when I played it, I felt really good. It was so harmonious, and it's so good to play it because you feel a spiritual thing. Bill Mullin, adaptation, agility, and keen awareness provide a mindset for the innovative thinking and discipline by design. Life and therefore work is a constant creative process of growing with what you've got and receiving vision to make things better. From a rock and roll drumming to recording studio engineer, TV radio station producing, mobile DJing, live audio and studio design and installing, music publishing, managing, manufacturing, repping, representative, and AV integration, design, and selling. Sales team managing, brand developing and marketing, CEO level stewardship to solution and business and consulting. Bill has had to transform to keep relevant and working. Kudos to you, Bill. You're still going. Bill celebrates 40 years of marriage to a very artistic and savvy woman who has been a gospel singer, ad agency, writer, producer, marketing, managing, active, loving mother, painter, and apparel designer. And her aesthetic has brought an environment of beauty and joy and their adaptability to God's guidance created an enduring kind of love. Along the way, Bill made a study of positive mentality and success factors as he gained the insights to apply charge agent factors to given situations. His strategic thinking, and practical, excuse me, my glasses kind of, I just can't get the right glasses, reading glasses, to, to implementation led to growing an organization's stock value 5 times over 3 years and to double annual revenue to 244 million. He navigated the acquisition, sale, and successful sustaining of that company's culture. Bill Mullin is now the president of Significant Media and Music, and this is how I caught hold of the title and what he does. An outgrowth of the Music for Media Publishing Company he maintained over 40 years parallel to his technology track. Placements including the Pelican Brief, Wyatt Earp, and the Gilmore Girls. Right on, Bill. You're in there. What a background. Significant is the producer of Significant. This is the title. I want to make that. It is the producer of music collaboratives, most notably, as I recall, Forever, a first of its kind podcast musical, having contributions of writing the primary works of the musical, coordinating, arranging, overseeing, and technical recording, selecting of talent, and engaging support services. Bill resides in Kansas City, Missouri. He is a member of 2 homeless mission boards, an advisor and contributor to Women's Recovery Home Organization, while on a service team at Abundant Life Church and sitting in with a Catholic and Protestant fellowship called the Breakfast. Let's see, Breakfastarians. Okay, Breakfastarians. Bill loves discipleship as a student, apprentice, and monitor or mentor to Christ. Bill is conservative in the true sense of the root word for conservation. He is not trying to have us go back to some former time, but is committed to bringing forward goodness and godly living, which are foundations of human heritage, survival, and sustainability, not the least of these being God's creation. Like one of his songs says, don't look left, don't look right, but look up. There are core mission attributes of the Next Humanity musical collaborative Bill Shepard's. And Bill, it's very impressive, all the work that you're doing. Could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now? Bill Mullin is the guest on the Strange Reality here, and Bill, tell us a little bit about catching up with what you're doing now. And I'm going to tell you,
Hmm.
I had a hard time reading some of this with my glasses because it's got a black background that I printed off the internet. It throws my glasses off or my eyesight off because I have to kind of look at the words and but
Sorry about that, but you plowed through it boldly and got most of it. It really is. Um, at first reading, you might say, "And this guy had a checkered past." All of those different things that he did, but it really is survival. It really is adapting. The music business is a rough trade, meaning you have to be able to juggle and you have to be able to be nimble. And in the end, for me, I had to grow into other areas for other revenue streams besides. Um, so, first and foremost, thank you, Dave. I really am glad to be here because I think you have an audience that's unique. I'm thinking that they are um, curious people,
yes, they are.
and because you explore topics of strange phenomena and such, and the supernatural,
Right.
and so I'm happy to be among people who have that level of curiosity, and I think curiosity is a driver for staying young or staying vital.
Yes.
I think that it's part of an openness that God wants us to have. And it maintains the exploring mind. It maintains the ability to think differently, to think innovatively, even. So I'm really happy to be here in the context of
Yeah.
what kind of topics you have, even though, like you said, my topic may not be
So strange.
exactly strange, but it was interesting because I'm with a group of men studying Revelations, and of course, study Revelations. You first have to look at prophecy, and once you look at prophecy, then you connect the dots
Right.
throughout Old to New Testament and going forward. And one of the gentlemen made a comment about, well, everyone wants to think that prophecy is strange, that it's so unusual, that it's supernatural. Well, yes and no, he says, but isn't it ordinary? If you have a relationship with the higher power,
Yeah.
then isn't that everyday occurrence for you?
Yeah, most of the people that listen to me, we talk about topics, and the key word for us is consciousness. That means you're open minded and you're taking things in. I
Yeah.
saw where Tesla said, they asked him, how do you get all of his knowledge? And he said the brain doesn't produce it. He said it comes from outside. The ideas come in, and our brain is kind of like a receptor. It takes in these ideas and plants them there in a memory. And
Amen.
our brain's main function is our body, take care of our body, to command the body to do its a routine thing. But he says that all these things come from inspiration from outside and in. And I think that's what you're talking about also, Bill.
Definitely, you alluded to it when you were talking about the making of music.
Mhm.
So, music is an emotional language, but the making of music, along with the making of any art and almost any other creative endeavor, has a connection directly to the creator. In other words, what you were talking about. In some sense, many artists step back and go, wow, that wrote itself, or this song appeared, and then I just got into this flow, and suddenly, voila, I had it all come together. Well, it doesn't write itself. There's a guiding hand in that process. In other words, the spirit of creativity is, in fact, a spirit from a higher power. It is a consciousness raising process. And so, yeah, a lot of that went into well, you ask about what I'm up to right now. It's still in the music production area, but yet I'm looking for collaborative efforts. This started out me thinking I was making a solo project, and before long, I realized it was growing a life of its own as I started the recording process. As that's the great thing of being a producer, you can step back and almost get a observer view. You know how when we go into almost out of body, but it's a state of mind where you're stepping back and you're really the observer self is doing the viewing and
Yeah, I
so,
I did that too, Bill. When I played music, I could play several instruments, so I knew how the music instrument's supposed to sound. I knew what parts were supposed to be in there. So a lot of times I would kind of direct it and produce it, and I'd say, "Well, that does."
Mhm.
I wish I would have stayed with the keyboards because as you get older, the keyboards is the best instrument for older people. Drums kind of fade out because there's a lot of energy there. But do you know Troy Anderson? You were talking about biblical prophecies and things. Do you know him?
No, I don't.
Yeah, I had him on the show a week or two ago, and he's a great guy, and he gets into prophecy and all this other stuff. But yeah, the consciousness and the spiritual and personal growth, the awakening of that spiritual and personal growth. You say that you can bring that the power of music for reflection and growth. How music's
Yeah.
a tool for introspection, awakening, spiritual, and personal growth. I know that personally, and I know Bill. That's why musicians get along because we can talk the same language sometimes.
Well, and that's how this became a collaboration. It really became, like I said, not my solo project. Suddenly I realized that it goes beyond directing people as far as what to play. It really gets into the eliciting, the drawing out of them, to have them get in the zone, to have them draw upon the higher energy so that, you know, years ago, I was recording with my partner at that point. We were a partner in this music for media company for publishing company for years. And so we're having a session with some top players um, in Chicago, and it's a break, and the drummer comes in, and is a jazz drummer who's now professor at Berklee School of Music, has played with many great jazz people, and he says to me, "Hey, Bill, what is it about your guys' sessions?" And of course, Doug was the music director. He was in the studio, and I was in the control room, engineering and oversight of getting the sound and capturing and all that. I said, "It's that guy in there." And he goes, "Oh, yeah, Doug. Doug does a great job." And I go, "Yeah, he invokes the Holy Spirit." And the guy's jaw dropped
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it was an unexpected thing. So, getting back to what you were talking about, number one, this became a bigger than me experience through this collaboration. And number two, that whole music capability of moving people, uh, we're all vibrating beings. Everything in the material world is vibrating. And so who sets that vibration? Who sets those forces in motion? We know. And as a result, music truly has our body. There's a term within physics, acoustics, called sympathetic vibration. And that is basically where things will resonate with sounds. And so our whole bodies start to resonate. And I think that's part and parcel of the reason why music has that special conveying uh, of emotion. But I will say that it actually gets to the spirit level, that it speaks to us in ways that words can't.
Right. I see when I played a lot of dances, I've seen people dance quite a bit and they seem like they have a great deal of fun. So they're raising their spirituality and us on stage. And when everything goes well and you're right there in that harmony, you got 3-part, 4-part harmony, it feels so good. There's an energy to it. There's a free
It
that
I'll
vibrate.
say I'll say it becomes a communion of souls. You know what I mean? The people, it's soul deep at times.
Yeah. And Bill, you are the president of Significant Media and Music. So you're doing that. I have a couple of clips that I've taken off of the internet, and we can go ahead and play them now. Is that okay?
Sure, let it spin.
You can talk about them later. And the way my Zoom works, it doesn't work on links very good. I just hope it does. It works on this share really well. So we'll see.
When you share, you have to make sure you click the
Yeah.
play sound with it. Yeah.
And my files are so deep and thick. A lot of people say, "Oh, you're busy." I said, "Yeah, I am kind of busy, but you'll see, that here's
There
a
we go.
here's the first one."
Well, here's a fact you may recognize. Our life experiences shape us into who we are and have brought us to this place in our lives, yet we don't take that into account and choose to live day by day. Getting through the day is often enough, so we tell ourselves. In the meantime, we want to put the painful things aside or behind us. And sometimes even the happy memories are tinged with a sense of loss. I'm out to make your day. Deep down, we know that acknowledging all we've been through, seeing the big picture of our life's journey is the path to putting our experiences into perspective. Here's the quandary. How can we expect to gain an understanding in our life's purpose without allowing ourselves to see the grand design that's brought us to this point? Whatever is innately deep within our human psyche, discover why. As I Recall Forever takes you there. Especially if you're an adult fascinated by the author stage of life, writing your own original script after having some success and challenge, determined to go from ambition to greater purpose, in soul searching. Be entertained, educated, enlightened, and escape. It's not escaping from, it's escaping to a new you. The As I Recall Forever journey. Go to asirecallforever.com.
That was a great
Where
clip.
the journey begins.
We'll do the other trailer. Then I'll have you narrate and tell us a little bit about what you did with those two.
If you're an adult in the author stage of life, questioning your situation and direction, asking now, after some success and challenge, how can I go from ambition to realize greater purpose? As I Recall Forever is for you. The new podcast musical, As I Recall Forever. As I Recall Forever. It's a musical memoir, the first of its kind. See your own life story of building characters within the narrative presented with thought-provoking music. Not music to escape, musical stories to face life. As I Recall Forever, performed by the group The Next Humanity, can be found at asirecallforever.com. Just ask.
Well, Zoom had a little difficulty handling the music track that goes with that, but that's okay. You still got an impression of thematically what we're talking about.
Usually, music, even on TV, on commercials, the music's always louder than the voices on the TV show or whatever, and you find that mostly on cable, I know. And on this, the music got really kind of loud, and hopefully people can adjust that. That's what you're talking about, Bill?
No, the music wasn't coming through on my end hardly at all. It cut in and out. And I think it's a matter that there's a setting you can actually change, go into a music setting within Zoom. It's meant for speech in general, but
Well,
if you
I heard it loud and clear on this side. I hope we get this
okay.
done video, and I'll check it before.
Well, it could be if it was from your end, it could have all gotten recorded fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
sometimes we have those, and a lot of people who do the shows, the podcasts, and the Zooms and the Skypes. You'll run into those audio and video technical problems, and even Zoom and Skype or whatever problems you have. A lot of live shows do the same thing sometimes, but on live, if it happens live, then you're in trouble. Bill,
Yeah.
would you explain to us what these two short segments were about?
Well, obviously they're promotional. They're a means for people to get some insight as to what the podcast musical, As I Recall Forever, is about, and to see what's in it for them. One of the things that I always look at, consider as I'm writing, and as we are looking at the promotional aspect, is why should the audience care? And so a lot of what I have put together has scenes. Each scene has a song attached to it, like any musical. And of course, the songs tend to be the high emotional point of each of the scenes. But they often are dealing with an issue or a certain part of life passage that is common to many people or may be unique to some people. In some respects, I'm talking about a specific tragedy I had to go through and how I got through, whether it's struggling or whether it's other things that are all part of life. That's reflected within the musical. The musical does have specific life periods that it addresses. So it is a faith quest. And as soon as I say that, I think I need to dive into for a minute how that forever appeal works in a general market sense. I hope it works for those curious or spiritually inclined or even the unbelieving watching world to have a perspective on, oh, he has, as I recall forever. Well, how can you recall forever? Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking back at those forever moments of my life and figuring, well, why do these things stand out and why is it so indelible? Why are these things so lasting? Why do I want them to last as poignant and or meaningful moments, encounters, people? And so I lean into the forever concept to have them look at the examined life. And this is not about, hey, look at me. I don't want people to look at me or praise me or even identify with me unless it directs them to look at and praise the Lord. So that is a ulterior motive behind this in some respects. But even if, do you have to be a believer to listen to this? No, but it would help. And in fact, the musical's narrative is about how I evolved in the direction of the Lord. It's not like for me, the Lord operated with me much like I was talking about music. It's something that's kind of imbued into you. It's something that you get a sense for. And so the musical itself is a faith quest, and we need to probably define, well, what is faith? Well, it's said that that's believing without full evidence that something is so. And yet faith is more, it's beyond belief. Believing is a thought process where one consults the rational mind for deliberating validity or truth. You
Right.
know, you're consciously and intellectually looking at, well, can I accept something? Can I accept a premise or concept? In the case of As I Recall Forever, that concept's forever. So we have that as common grounds. So many accept it that it's referred to every day, the term is always and forever as mentioned in the promo. So some might call it a notion of how we experience those words within the concept. But the use of those words are so frequent that we have to see that it is almost subconscious. It's so innately deep within us. Perhaps, you know, um, perhaps we need to even refer to, the ancient teacher in Ecclesiastes who got it right, who says, He has made all things beautiful. He has planted eternity in our hearts.
Mhm.
And yet says, while we cannot fathom his greatness. And I think that's why I like talking to your audience.
Yeah.
Again, for that connection. The Lord is incomprehensible.
Right.
Yet we want to use our left brain faculties for believing to comprehend him. Well, that's an enigma itself. We can't comprehend him. So here is where faith takes on a vast and wonderful meaning. Faith is perpetually awesome. We're in a state of awe when you're in a faithful mindset. It puts us in a state of wonder. And it's because we can't process it. It's like one of my songs is called Faith in Uncertainty. Well, yes, it's about having faith to persevere during uncertainty, but it's also about having faith in the uncertainty itself. And in that, I make a reference to looking at the ocean waves. And we can't process that. We can't say when the next wave is going to be, the next ripple. Why is that? Well, that's because a greater mind created this for us in a way to send the message that this is awesome. You should be in awe of creation.
Let me add something as a drummer, and you're a drummer too, Bill. Uh, Drums were the first instrument in
Oh,
ancient
yeah.
times with people, and the beat or the drum beat got people's spirits up, just the beat alone. I noticed when I played on stage, the most important piece of my drum kit was the foot bass, because it's that bass, that bottom that people follow to dance with. It's that beat, and it rings true to their heart. It's like a heartbeat, and it goes to
No
that.
doubt.
Yeah. And we talked earlier, I don't know if I mentioned it on the show yet, but Tesla said that we get everything from outside. The brain is just a recording instrument, and it also, the brain's biggest function is to run our body, our sleep, our breathing, our heart rate. The brain is in charge of all that. But we get everything, an inspiration or any creativity comes from outside and comes into us like some kind of message or frequency that gets into our brain and records it. And then the next morning, like Tesla said he would listen to these things and get up and start doing it physically, and coming across with some great experiments and some great technical knowledge that he got from outside. A lot of people said that everything comes from outside, and that God is inside of us and we're a receptor, and that creativity comes from outside of us. You agree with that, Bill? Am I just talking off the cuff here?
No, he's the creator.
Yeah.
And so definitely that life force that you're talking about, yes, drumming does resemble and maybe harkens to our heartbeat, the throbbing pulse of being alive,
Yeah.
and the joyousness that you were talking about, that music stirs. So this is all part of the faith quest that I'm talking about, that you're seeking. In faith, you cross over to being. Faith is not necessarily an intellectual process. Like I said, it's where you surrender. So many believe there's a higher power, right? You ask the general public, do you believe there could be a God? And some don't say, but yes, others say it could be a higher power. In faith, one not only believes in the higher power, one becomes of that higher power.
That's real. Mhm.
And so that's not a thinking process.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's not even sensing or knowing. To me, it's where the land of music and poetry and even visual arts, again, you come into a state of wonder sometimes. I wonder why this moves me so much.
Yeah.
They aid us in what I'll say is apprehension. Apprehension. We cannot rely on pure comprehension of the mysteries of life. So, apprehension is where we just get to this point of getting it. You know what I mean? That is the usefulness of getting it, if only to pointing to the light.
Right. The
So it,
consciousness people build that I have on the show a lot of times, spirituality people, they believe in a source. They believe in a
Mhm.
creator. And we all do. The spirit, they may not go to church or attend church, but they have the spirituality about them that they believe that there's something higher. And most people, I think maybe only 20-25% of people don't believe in a God or whatever. I I want to ask you this about music, Bill. Since you're into this so much and you're figuring everything out, you're producer and director. Matter of fact, you were the producer of this forever video, and you recall, the forever video. So I wanted to ask you. I hear songs at night when I'm sleeping. I call it sleepy time music. It's real nice music, and I'll hear a song like my dad was a singer too back in his day, and there was a few songs that he sang. I would hear those on the TV when I play the music, and it brings back memories. It just kind of triggers memories of that person.
Mhm.
And songs do, they'll hit you. And a lot of people say that too. They said they'll hear a certain song and it'll take them back. What does that affect, Bill? Have you studied that kind of effect, bringing the memories back just by music?
To me, it does tie into what I call forever moments.
There, yeah,
Now, it is, of course, the soundtrack of your life, that there's an imprint of a song that was going around, playing on radio during a period, and that period may have had that particular instance. Um, and yet, it's not just coincidental burning into your subconscious or memories. Um, it is tied together with what you hold dear, and you have to start to look at why you hold things dear. And again, I say this in the context of, as I recall, forever being a person looking at a span of life and looking at all life stages. I have 5 life stages plotted within the musical. One is the actor, and that's the early stage of mimicking, seeing how things are portrayed, expressed, and imitating others. And then you move into a period of adventurer, from the actor to the adventurer, where you're trying out these parts and you are forming some degree of what scripts work in different situations. And then you move into authorship or artist stage of life, where you're starting to write your own script. Or in the artist, I think it's a combination thing where you're drawing, you can might say drawing your own conclusions, or actually visualizing, using visualization as a means of bringing things to life, of working to produce something useful for people, something meaningful. And so that very visualization area, again, it comes back to where does that come from? You know what I mean? And if you were given that idea, then chances are you have the means to accomplish those ideas. So that's that third stage. But then we go into a stage of the agent. And you can see I've kind of plotted this along performing arts lines.
Yeah.
But from the artist or author stage into the agent, and that ties into psychological principles of agency. So now we're not only writing our own scripts, but we're trying to look for why we're doing this a little more. And that's where the shift from ambition or achievement to purpose comes in. And once you get a purpose, you know, there's going to be a fellow that I will be interviewing for what I have as a collaborative camp within my little ecosystem where the podcast resides right now. There's going to be additional things like this, you know, where I'm talking to folks who can help. And his area of expertise is just that, from ambition to purpose. And purpose, of course, is often called the calling.
Right.
And his specialty is, I'll call it midlife expeditions, where you get to 30 something, 40 something, even later, and you're going, I think I need to refine where I'm at. So when you were talking about getting inspired, okay, well, what does inspire mean? That root word is in spirit. So eventually the believer becomes fully faithful at a time when, I'll use an electrical analogy, when you put a transformer in the power circuit. To use that electrical analogy, a transformer takes high voltage. You know that they sit up on telephone poles from the high tension lines. That high voltage we cannot use without frying the circuits of everything in our house, right? And it makes the transformer, that is, makes the energy flow, to continue the analogy, into our consciousness. It makes that available to us. Now, it does come close to blowing our minds at times. And I think, again, that's some of the heart of curiosity and the heart of what some of your listeners reach for. It makes possible all that we will do for goodness sake. And with that small sharing of divine power, you know, our appliances, if you will, applications, are the tools that we can plug in, will bring that energy to life.
Right. Bill.
And
Yeah.
it's
let's,
about a discipline,
yeah.
you know.
All right. I wanted to go back to those
Yeah.
clips that we played. They're about a minute and a half. And I hope that, like I said, I hope the audio carried through on the recording. Here's the thing. Behind the scenes, as I recall forever, the creation process, writing, talent selection, and the coordination it takes to bring a podcast musical to life. What were your thoughts, and where were you getting these ideas as you directed and produced this? Were they just streaming in, or did you have a dream at night and did it tell you to do this? How did you come across that, Bill, for like the inspiration we're talking about? Matter of fact, they were great. They were great clips. I mean, they explained life in a very brief minute and a half. It really explained things. So could you?
I'll say
Yeah.
yes, yes, and yes to all of those inspirational moments. But I will say this, that my intention for this material was to look at all the moments and experiences I had, like I said, and realizing how they had a life-changing impact on me. But I did not have a big bang moment. I just started the writing process. And it was a series of lessons that were revealed to me. And this, for me, that's how God comes to my mind,
Mhm.
like pieces of puzzles that I have to go, oh, there's another piece that fits here. So over time, as the messages organize themselves, again, that's the artist expression that we often have to cling to because we're not sure, why we connected one thing to another. But it became clear that I wanted I wanted to communicate um, all of these different segments as a whole. And I had a big, long form body of work. And the podcast format came to me because it was like, well, where are the concept albums of today? Well, they aren't because we don't have physical media. And we've become this kind of short attention span theater out there. And so I realized though, hey, people do have the behavior of watching Netflix, Amazon, etc., episodic
Right.
video. So why wouldn't they look at episodic music? And of course, once you take the episodic music and you put a narrative to it. So all of this, I didn't realize that I needed to put the narrative to it until all the orchestration was done and I started working with vocalists. I realized, man, this is really good. And I called a guy. Well, I went through a mutual friend. I've known this man for some time. He knows of me. We've been together at the same gatherings and what have you. But he's close to and has sung with another woman who's close to me. And my wife wrote about her parents' biography as a gospel group. And so I used that leverage to call and say, Val, what do you think of this song? And I'm thinking of bringing Tim in. And she goes, oh, yeah, you got to play this for him. And so I did. And I sent it to him. And he writes back, this is, and sometimes you just remember something so much because it impacts you as, validation. He says, this is magnificent. I want to work on this. Not only do I want to work on this, but I want to work with you to cast other vocalists to have a well-rounded. I sing and I sing on some of the key songs that are personally, touching to me, or I felt, okay, I've got that covered. And some songs I gave up, which I think were greater emotional impact or could be a hit. And by the way, my definition of a hit is not a million seller. It's when it is moving someone.
Right.
And I've got a story about that. But anyway, I realized putting these things into shorter episodes was kind of key to making it digestible. And so when I started out the musical journey, I had to just let it happen. And over the course of that, I realized it's not about what I want to accomplish. It's not necessarily about how many people I want to have hear it. Those things are important from a success factor, But what I found out was it was a lot more about what I was going to become once I had it ready. And that becoming is when God validates what you're doing. You know what I mean? That's where you get to have a sense of, I wasn't ready to do this interview with you, Dave, probably as much as 6 or 7 months ago when you would have thought, oh, I've got it kind of complete. I had some things I wanted to do yet. And like I said, once I got the orchestration done, once I got Tim Davis to do the vocals and took it to another level. And I went, wow.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
and that's the inspiration that keeps you going. I know I've been pushed. I never did write books until 3 years ago, and I'm old. And
Yeah.
I was pushed in doing it. I got the inspiration from outside that kept pushing me to tell me to do it. You mentioned something about short term. People have a lot of short term memories, or not memories, but reading or watching. And that TikTok and Instagram has ruined the long term, like books. Let's say I'm publishing books, and of course book sales are not as good as what the internet can have. And this is the short term shows like TikTok and Instagram has really threw us into a quick a quick read or a quick watch and then go to something else. And that's how people are developing. And with you, with these YouTube ideas, with these two segments, that's a great idea to get into that group of people that are millions and millions of people, to give them that message, Bill. It's a
Well,
good.
your followers are already in a state of mind where they're willing to, in the course of perhaps even on a exercise treadmill or out for a walk or driving in their car, they're willing to kind of take things in.
Mhm.
And so definitely, I don't get me started because I think there's in the whole digital onslaught with so much coming at us. I think there's actually an erasure of memory. I think it's in some cases it's purposeful, and I'm not trying to get spooky
Yeah, I know what you're talking.
conspiracy theorist on you, but I'm saying the net result is that people do not have attention spans to concentrate, to reflect. And that's what I'm kind of asking of people. I'm going, hey, listen to this. And it's my memoir, okay? It's my story. And I'm a really good, bad example to learn from, you know?
A good bad example to learn from. I never heard that said before.
Well, that's what I came to. Like I said, I would often say, Lord, when are you going to be ready to help me here? And what I found out was he was saying, I'm always ready to help you, but when you're ready.
You know,
You know what I mean?
I come up with the inspirational thing with my wife the other day. I said, "Don't let your dreams get ahead of you. Let your dreams get behind you and push you." It's like when you have foot tracks in the sand
Yeah.
and you look back and you don't see other foot tracks, and Jesus says, "I've been following you all the way. I'm behind you." And I thought dreams are kind of like the same way. Let those dreams get behind you and push you. And
Well, we're blessed by that.
yeah,
And what happens, this is not my story again. Yes, I use it as a frame of reference, the only one I have, but it applies to anyone at any life stage, young or old, rich or poor. And I want them to start to see themselves and to have their own reflection. Like I said, I have some songs that I think are going to hit the mark. I'll tell you one example. So I have a design agency that's helping me out. And by the way, I think some of your people will dig, use an old term that
yeah,
jazz cats use.
1960s, yeah.
Yeah, will use will see the imagery that I've had created for this and go, ooh, that's kind of otherworldly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm going for ethereal. I'm going for an ethereal parallel or parallel to the material domain we're in. And one of my songs is uh, Everything is Spiritual. And the artwork for that is a dark city street scene in black and white, except for this gateway that sits in the middle of it. If you see my artwork, you'll see that, as I recall, Forever has a guy standing on a landscape, and ahead of him are a series of these glowing doorways on down a path that goes off into the horizon.
Mhm.
And so that in and of itself starts to, people go, ooh, that looks like sci-fi or something, or There's something interesting going on here. Well, I use it to stir the imagination, of course, but also to reflect that there is a spiritual world, and that it has gathered some folks who are almost like Comic-Con type enthusiasts, you know what I mean? And they like space fantasy, or they like other things. And in fact, the guy that my agency found to produce these for me, because we weren't finding it in stock available imagery, illustrations, photographs, but we found a guy who does that kind of otherworldly fantasy drawings, you know. And the other worlds can be, Conan the Barbarian and other types of things that a lot of those folks kind of get into. And I've been through my sci-fi reading stage of life and what have you. Point being is that I like it when those people are liking or joining my YouTube channel or whatever, because it's like, okay, you kind of get the mystery of things. And I'm a steward of mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who made me that?
Yeah.
I was told he came to this earth to tell me.
Yeah, that's why all my other people that are listening in, they're ghost hunters, they're Bigfoot hunters, they're ET UFO hunters, and that's the mysteries that they're looking for. And getting to frequencies, music is a frequency, and
Yeah.
some music I don't like. I don't want to name them off. There's a couple of them that are really out there, but I like all kinds of music, almost 90% of music, more or more. And the frequencies, they say, scientists say, our DNA has a frequency. Each one of us have a different frequency.
Well,
And
yeah.
when we tune into that frequency from outside, either be music or whatever, it makes you feel good. And also they said frequencies are healing. So music is actually a healing method, for people.
Well, it's funny because you're a drummer and I'm a drummer, but guess what? I used minimal drumming on this because I went for orchestration. And people go, so is this classical? And I go, well, no, classical is kind of like, yes, it's orchestral at times, but there's times when I have, simple combos and piano vocal and things like that. But anyway, I use a rich palette of people to stir what these scenes were saying, just like really good soundtracks do. Part of the reason why you like movies is by the nature of the instrumental um, swelling and punctuation and everything else.
Right.
So my point was to say one particular song, I was orienting the agency that was handling my branding and my visuals, my imagery. Great agency. And it's called the Design Ranch, by the way. I'll plug them. At any rate, I was introducing a song at a time to them about every other day so that they could hear the nature of what the style was. And it's very cross genre. I mean, it goes from like an orchestrated pop to an orchestrated jazzy to like a small ensemble. There's some electronica type sounds with orchestration that start to get that whole ethereal thing going on. At any rate, so as we gathered next after I sent a particular song in, and we were talking about progress and you know showing me some drafts and refining things, but we have our meeting, huddle up, and the art director goes, that song you sent over, and it happened to be something called Make Me Aware. He said that really hit me, and it's a song of a boy with a learning disability. And he gets to the point of feeling helpless. He's getting older and he's going from, like math goes from something you can clearly see by 2 pencils plus 2 pencils is 4 pencils. And he gets into abstractions of geometry. Geometry, at least you can kind of see, but, um, you know, calculus and all these other advanced math is so abstract. But at any rate, he ends up praying, just make me aware, give me a clue. And that's what it was about. And he goes, you know, my son is dyslexic. And right there, I talked about what is a hit in my view. I
Mhm.
said, my work is done.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you, Nathaniel, because you're telling me you were moved. And he goes, yes. And I'm playing it for my son.
that's great.
And it's about it's basically the confidence that you're not alone, but I'm able to go on and say to that man, of course, you may know of Malcolm Gladwell. And he wrote a book called David and Goliath. Well, what's that story about? It's about the little man defeating the monster, the giant of his life,
Mhm.
the thing he encounters that is life threatening, not only to him, but to everyone he loves. And so, what does David do? He uses his special talent. He had been raised shepherding, and that's how he kept the herd together through his sling. And he defeats. So, that exactly is the message to somebody with a learning disability, that it's not that you will prevail in spite of your disability, because you come to terms with your disability and you get to understand yourself in that disability, and you get to prevail because of your disability.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we see people that are going through, like they're in wheelchairs and they've lost a leg or two, combat injuries or birth defects. We look at these people and we say, "Oh, well, that's really sad," but they seem so strong. They have this ability, like you just alluded to, that they have this ability for enduring all that of suffering and loss, and they're able to come through it somehow or another. And that's
It's
amazing.
a beautiful resiliency.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful shift of the blind man shifting to every other sense that he has to become a Stevie Wonder. And they're not just all just becoming music. It's about that adaptation, and it's the becoming of, it's not overcoming as much as it is embracing what you've got
Mhm.
and making the most of it. And that's what that particular song is about. And so I use that as a point of reference right now to say that's what the songs are about in this musical.
Yeah.
Each one of them, I went and I wrote them and I didn't think them through. I just said, what was going on here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yet I do want to present, in some cases, I present some dark and deep stuff that you go, wow, that's a little rough. But at the end of it, I always try to shine the light. I always try to say, but there's hope. And here's the hope of getting through. And so each one of these things has a particular outcome, an outcome that somebody can go, oh, now I know how to think, whether it's exactly that your son has a learning disability or that you have, or you just know somebody else. It's just to increase, like you said, the ability to look empathetically at people, to look through his eyes.
Mhm.
And so that's what thrilled me
Yeah, right.
about
Bill,
doing this.
I wanted to add something in as a disclaimer about people that suffered losses of their legs and arms and they were born with disabilities. I'm not saying that they didn't go through pain.
Oh
They
no.
they go through a tremendous amount of private pain and sorrow and just try to struggle through what they're going through, and they try to make some sense of it. And it takes a while sometimes for them to do that, but because it's not, we look at them and say we empathize with what's going on with them. And I truly do, as a combat veteran. I see this with a lot of vets, but they have to go through a lot of pain to get to where they're at, to where they acknowledge what they have to deal with. I wanted to ask you about this future of collaborative music. What do you mean by that, Bill? The collaborative music scene. What is that? What is that? What's that all about, Bill?
Well, I was blessed to work with a man in my career who um, is a very astute author. Okay. And I was working with, like I said, I had a technology track in music technology, which led to video and audio technologies and communications technologies and what have you. It just it grew and grew by the nature of the company that we had, which was a very empowering company. I had one guy who was working a customer service phone desk job, and he started to sell more of a particular brand than any of our outside salespeople. And I said, "How are you doing this? How did you?" He says, "Well, I just start talking to people about what they're working on and da 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 da." And I said, "Well, it's not your job." And he says, I said, how did you do that?" He says, "I gave myself permission." So I came from an environment of that kind of enabling folks. And so it's by God's grace that I was able to look back on that time and draw upon it. And it grew to a point where I was working with a particular young man who broke off from his father's business to have his own business. So I met him in the late 20s or early 30 somethings and have been working with him for probably close to 8 or so years. And the pandemic hit, and we go, wow, our trade show, both trade shows, the National Association of Broadcasters and what was called Infocom, which is the non-broadcast audio, video, music communications market, weren't doing trade shows. We weren't going to have conferences. There weren't opportunities to go to sessions and learn. And we said, well, why don't we put something together that's like a full day conference, and we could have experts speak to certain things. And of course, one of the things we wanted to speak to was resiliency in business, with people wondering how their business was going to go. And I told him, what we're doing is trying to create an experience. And I thought, I'm going to contact Zoom, who I had an alliance with. And I presented, would you be interested in having a full day conference and having different speakers? And they had just created what was called their breakout rooms. So a speaker could present in the main room, quote unquote, but then we could say, now the speaker's going over to this breakout room for Q&A and discussing things with you. If you want to now exit, go ahead and do that. We're going to go on and have our next speaker. So you get the flow of what we were doing. And we thought this is a great idea. Zoom says, yeah, that's pretty cool. And I said to the fella, what we're doing is an experience. And there's a guy who wrote a book called The Experience Economy, Joe Pine. He wrote it with a partner. And I said, man, he really defines how to have a designed experience. And I said, feels so much like what we're doing. Well, the next week we got back together for a progress meeting, and this young guy says, well, I've got Joe Pine. And I go, no way. I mean, this is a Harvard published book, bestseller, literally changed the way people think of marketing right around the year 2000. And that's when it really went, even Apple Store kind of represents that. You're not selling at people. You're drawing them into an experience. You're engaging with them. You're helping them. You've got a genius bar. All that kind of thing was a shift in the marketing mindset. And again, it's not that old school selling, trying to manipulate somebody into buying something stuff. So Joe came in and did that and was great. He was one of the keynotes. and it was something that our industry needed to hear too. So that was a beautiful thing. So time passes, and I go into retirement, of course, and suddenly on LinkedIn I get a message from Joe. Where are you? Your company email keeps bouncing back at me, and I go, well, I'm not there anymore. I retired. In fact, I sold the company. It wasn't my company per se. By the way, the thing that made that a beautiful company was an employee-owned company. Everybody had a stake. So everybody had a little bit of a payday. But the whole point is, um, got talking with Joe, and I said, he said, what are you up to? And I said, well, I'm in the midst of writing music, and it's shaping up into this faith quest that I'm connecting the dots in my life and seeing God at work. And he goes, oh, did you know I'm an apologist? So here I am. I've known the man for several years, and I go, no. It's like, I'll send you some of my sermons. So the interesting thing is that he's now working on a book about transformation. And I said, that's no coincidence, because that is the highest form of anything you can offer in business. You can offer something at the commodity level. I got a guy I know who brings in rosebuds and all kinds of, if you're going to make potpourri in the United States, he's got every ingredient for potpourri. So it's kind of at a commodity level. But at any rate, I'm sure he does things to make it, in terms of his service, make it stand out. But then you can have products, then you can have services, then you have the experiences. And that's where you change the relationship with your customer. But atop of that, you have something called transformation. And transformation is where you've actually changed the course of that person's life in some way to become something capable. And so, anyway, Joe has been an incredible resource for me in putting this thing together.
That's great. Yeah. That's a collaboration there.
So now we're talking about collaboration. Exactly.
Right.
So one of the things he's put together, he has a concept called the collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not a co-op. It's not a collective. Collective gets some baggage attached to it. It's the human dynamic that happens within a collaborative. And that is having it open to contribution, where you have high trust levels, that somebody can speak out and go, what about this? What about that? And you can, now it's not like this is brand new in the human evolution, but it's a matter that is now crystallizing into a way of thinking that allows for different perspectives to contribute to a whole, and the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And that whole level of human dynamic that we've known about for some time, but now Joe is harnessing that into how do we actually not only serve people, but how do we help them transform towards the aspirations of their life?
Now, there's no better deed that a person can do in helping humankind and be kind and generous, but also enlightening them with things like you're talking about with projects that you.
And you know what? I hope they're enlightened, but it's not going to be me doing it.
Yeah.
If, like I said, if they listen to this story, they're going to go, oh, this is goofy or whatever. They may have different feelings towards different things that I touch upon. But my point is, I want them to be moved. I want them to be moved by their own direction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do the saving. He does.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's what it's about
Okay.
in terms of what Joe did to help me put my head in the right place. And I needed to have that, and to see him literally on Substack. He has a group that literally see him writing the book in progress. And
Mhm.
it's like, this is amazing, Joe. You've actually opened up your workshop, and you've got people seeing, and you ask for feedback, and we give feedback on what about this, what about that. Um, and so that speaks to that whole um, open source, if you will,
Yeah.
uh, uh, means of uh, harnessing others towards you, the thing that you want to have an outcome on. So,
Now, you mentioned something here, the music industry evolution. I know I've been through the 50s and 60s, and I played a lot of the songs in the 60s. And the insights from Bill's 40 years in the industry, from drumming and studio engineering, producing and adapting in a digital age. Where do you see music heading towards, Bill, in the new music industry?
was a lot to share. One of the things I think we have evolved to is formatted music that is driven largely by demographic study or marketing. Um, and so I think in some ways we have fallen into um, retrospectives. We've all become retro, um, and not forward thinking. Not, and I think the way some of the world looks a little scary to people. Now there's some great musicians and wonderful songwriters, and you can watch the Grammy Awards, you can watch the Dove Awards, you can see highly talented people, but yet I get a sense for music falling into pigeonholes at times.
Right. What about
Um,
electronic? I hear a lot of songs, a lot of new songs that you have the bass, you have the drums, you have keyboards, you even have guitar licks that are played by computers. And they just generate this music from a soundboard and from computers, and they develop a track, and then they get a singer in, and the singer
mhm.
will sing the tune, but also they can correct the singer's voice. If they hit low notes or sour notes or whatever, that the computer can correct those mistakes and make their singing flawless. And it just seems like to me it's AI that's taking over the music industry. Actually, they can actually mimic a voice.
Well, AI is just stepping in to take over some of the automation or the processing that was already at hand, meaning at the end of our hands
yeah,
that we were running, but now AI is running. My point about electronics, or the media production process, number one, some of the electronics I hear, I employ because I'm a bit in awe of the sonic quality,
mm,
that the degree of depth of field of a particular recording. And I'm still talking about the stereo ones, not surrounds. Although surround has been a bit of a leap. I really loved the soundtrack to the movie Soul because man, there were things going on in that. My son has a surround set up, and it was like, whoa, that was delightful.
yeah.
But I'm delighted also by electronics, and some of these, the mastery of some of these people. I'm also kind of looking at some of it going, oh, geez, more of the same.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Lord wants us to be producing more of the same. He wants us to be innovating. He wants us to be doing things. And what happens with that automation process, it happens with any automation process, whether it's in music or not. And that is squeezing the life out of it, meaning you don't hear humanness anymore. And in fact, the name of the band, when I realized it wasn't a solo project anymore, I thought about what do I want to reflect? And the name is The Next Humanity. So, as I recall forever, the musical is really by that collaborative, the next humanity. Well, what I want people to say, well, what is the next humanity? And I go, that's a good question.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
Well, you know, back in the
What,
60s and
what's your version of the next humanity?
70s, I think it was in music industry. I think it's been a slow roll because in the 60s and 70s, they even had synthesizers that
Oh, yeah.
mimic sounds and keyboard sounds and stuff.
Well, even, the ARPs had an arpeggiator on it. And
Yeah.
there's a great song by The Who, Barbara O'Reilly, where that leapt right out of the radio for me. I go, wow, that is such a cool sound. So there's cool sounds in electronics. I'm not anti-electronic.
Neither am I, but I
And
still enjoy a live band with everybody playing an instrument on stage. That's still
well,
never go out of trend or whatever.
well, you're preaching to the choir. I worked with 70 of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
So I had the ability to hire folks that truly brought a touch, a feel, the ability to hear the breathing. And I don't mean to hear, I
yeah.
mean to hear the breath and life of the music. And that's also why I went towards orchestration. And people are going to go, oh, I don't know if I like symphony stuff. Well, give it a try, because it's really meant to be like a good soundtrack. It's meant to enhance the story. It's meant to enhance the song's meaning. And, I can say that throughout the whole process, I said it wasn't revealed, but over time, I've gotten a perspective. And the process of writing, producing the musicals, given me a glimpse of his grand design.
Yeah.
And so that's the most you could ask for.
Yeah.
You know,
This is yeah, Bill Mullin is my guest, and this is a strange reality. I don't have it on the screen. I picked a different screen for this
yeah.
show. Do that every once in a while. Uh, I want to get to the last topic and last subject we'll speak about is faith in art, exploring how Bill's love for Jesus shapes his approach to music, artistry, and storytelling. And you just alluded to, the creator. And every night that I pray about, I thank the Lord for letting us brothers have the talent to play for people. We enjoyed it and we hope the people enjoyed it. They seemed like they did. And we went on for years playing, but it was a great pleasure to do that. And I think that was a gift from God. And I think music or any kind of a talent comes from God, from outside, and it's an inspiration. Bill, what do you think of that? I know you think a lot about the Lord.
Well, this project in particular was meant to take it to the street. Matthew 28. We have the Great Commission to share. And it's not just to share, it's to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how can I teach within writing? Um, does the world need another I love you, I love you, I love you song? Yeah, good one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it reminds us of that the romantic love in our lives that obviously stirs us up also can lead to a greater love and agape, as it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, yeah, I think that um, every means we can is to, as an artist, take that faith relationship for people to I get back to, I went on about faith, for people to get to know the difference between believing and to crossing over into a faith existence.
Mm-hmm.
Like a guy who's head of discipleship tells me, we get to live in the divine dimension now, and we get to not just yearn for a day when we can get into heaven, we yearn for heaven to get into us, to get into our hearts today.
Right.
So that becomes enormous. it becomes awesome. And what my point is that when I am able to talk to anyone who is an artist, I will rely on a book called Art and Faith. Makoto Fujimura is the author, and he is a visual painter. Okay. But he's become famous in that fine arts world. But every one of his paintings has a spiritual significance, if not a direct biblical reference. And so you can, in terms of what we were talking about, that intrinsicness of visual art and how you go, what is that saying? And then you find out the rest of the story. So I don't consider myself a Christian artist. Okay. Just watch the Dove Awards. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Intense. I mean, it's become a blessed industry. And songwriters that really shine, I admire what they're doing. And even on down to the praise band at any church, they all now can plug into a repertoire that people know because they've heard it on the radio. And you know what I mean? That it's not when I went in to read the Bible, or excuse me, the hymnal when I was young and go, oh, what's this song? You know, then I got to look at the notes and go, oh, it goes up here. And there's 3 notes up. Oh, okay. And I'm not saying that's how I learned to read music, but it's how I learned to follow a hymnal song. Well, nowadays people kind of get these songs embedded in, you know, through repeated exposure on praise and worship stations. And that's kind of the heart of
I used to play. Yeah, I used to play in a rock gospel band, 2 of them,
yeah.
you know, in the past, and I enjoyed doing that. And it was something that you want to give to the Lord. You know, your talents.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. I'm
Oh,
just saying that I, as an individual, I take a lead more that I'm an artistic Christian, not a Christian artist.
right.
What the heck are you saying, Bill? What I'm saying is the noun has Christ in it. Artistic Christian. Okay. That is being modified by artistic versus a Christian artist, where artistry is modified by Christianity. And again, it's just my own little picadillo, and it's meant to remind myself who the boss is. But it's also in keeping with this book, and I'll say it again, Art and Faith. It's worth picking up if you're an artist of any kind and you are writing to his glory, you are painting in his wonder. And it doesn't mean that you actually are rendering a painting of the heavens or whatever, but it can be anything that you topically feel drawn to or he leads you to. And you know what I'm saying? That you end up taking it to the general marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit what I have in this, and that's why the theme of forever is used as a springboard, as a conversation starter, as a way of saying, you know, why do you think there is such a thing as forever? Why do you wish for it? Do you see the connections in your life that affirm that there's something forever about them? And do you see that trajectory going off into forever? Well, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get there?
Yeah.
You know what I
Frequencies are a very important thing in our life. Everything's made up of frequencies, and you said that earlier. And it frequencies of music and frequencies, different kinds of, I guess, tectonic frequencies where
Oh yeah. Everything, every material thing has a cycle time
Mm.
of vibrating.
Right.
And you mentioned earlier, we're all individually. Well, yeah, it's just like every room that you go into has a different resonance factor.
So it does.
Why do you think people like JBL speakers versus Electro Voice speakers versus Bose speakers? Because they're all made differently and they each have a certain sound quality. I don't mean high quality, low quality, I mean, a characteristic that they like. It's how it resonates. And so that's often how I think we perceive God. What resonates with us? Uh, why are we encountering even certain people in our path and suddenly what they said resonates or
Right.
just something about them?
Yeah. I like songs, I like listening to AC/DC. I've actually played a couple of their songs that's rock and roll, but I also like music,
Oh, that
like,
devil music you're into.
yeah, that but I like music like You Only Live Twice and Canadian Sunset. I also like tunes like that, really nice songs, Theme from Summer Place, so yeah, it's I like that kind of music myself, and that's what I'll listen to sometimes before my podcast. I'll listen to those tunes to kind of just mellow me out and get me in the mood for things. And it's but when I want something to shake me up a little bit, I go to I don't like the heavy metal music. I have to say that. And also, a lot of there's certain rap songs I like, singing rap songs, but I don't like the deep rap. I don't get it. I guess I'm too.
Yeah, there's all kinds of cultural influences, things that we're predisposed to because we heard our parents kind of playing that. You think a theme from Summer Place, I immediately think of stuff my parents would listen to because they came from the Glenn Miller big band era and all that sort of thing.
Right.
Um, and so we have our own things that were introduced to us at different times of our life. But when I step back and I look at it, it was funny because yes, is there devil's music? It's all matter of how music is used.
Yeah.
And there was a funny guy who a lot of Christians at the time didn't like. He had a song called "Why Does the Devil Have All the Good Music?" And it was a commentary of really how some people were judging based on a music style. And in fact, of course, what came along after that was a band called Striper, which was a heavy metal band, a big hair band, hard rocking Jesus music.
There's some bands that sounds like three chainsaws on the stage, roaring at the same time. That's the heavy metal music. I,
Oh man,
I don't.
there was an act on the Dove Awards, and
Yeah.
I'm going, yeah, I think I heard something about Jesus in there. Yeah, cool. Well, the whole point is that, music is a tool. Music is we can use language in hundreds of ways. We can use language to do wicked things. We
Yes.
could use language to manipulate people. We can use one of my favorite books in marketing was Trust Me, I'm Lying. And it's by a guy, Ryan Holiday, who is basically saying, careful, marketing lies to you.
Right.
And here's how.
Oh,
He wrote a great book.
we've been getting a lot of that disinformation throughout history. Uh, Bill, we're coming
Yeah,
to conclusion. I want you to tell people how they can get a hold of you,
thank you.
and how they can get in touch with you at YouTube. Bill Mullin, go ahead and close it out and tell us how we can get to you.
Yeah, it's been a lot of interesting rambling for you and I hope the audience was digging it. As I Recall Forever um, is the platform, not only the name of the podcast musical, but it's also the landing page, as I recall forever.com, gets you to more about the musical, gets you to the trailer video, gets to me speaking as an invitation of how to join us and how to see that. Now, it's also on most of the podcast platforms only today as a trailer and an introduction. So you get to hear an excerpt from the podcast series, but you also get to hear that if you sign up. If when you come to asIrecallforever.com, there'll be a pop-up to join the newsletter. Then you can even get a sampling of this excerpt to really hear a narrative and song together and go, oh, that sounds like something I'd like. Of course, also there is some links to the music. We have 3 songs from it out as singles. So they're on the Spotify, Apple, and most of the streaming platforms under The Next Humanity. So The Next Humanity is the collaborative group, and The Next Humanity has nested within that website, asIrecallforever.com. So that's actually where we host this little ecosystem. So once you sign up, it is a for pay. It's behind a paywall, but it's reasonable, number one. And you might say, well, why isn't it free? Well, first of all of those services that provide free, you become the product, right? So now they're using you as data mining and what have you. You won't get that with us. Privacy totally upheld. Number two, when it's free, you can invite some bad actors, if you get my drift, people who come into that and just be disruptive and disrespectful and dissing.
Trolls, we call them. Yeah.
There you go. So who wants that?
Yeah.
So, and then lastly, a lot of times people think because music floats through the air that it's free. And I think a lot of people will understand they're going to get their music's worth. They're going to get their message worth, and they're going to have a chance to pause for perspective. And that's what we want. And so once you're within that membership, you get to hear all of the music. You can stream the music right there. You can download even up to what's called UHD, ultra high definition audio tracks, or like audiophile quality digital, which is way above MP3s.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some people who are discerning listeners and they really like vinyl. We're coming out in vinyl. There's an entire, like a musical playbill, or a maybe steroids, liner notes on steroids kind of thing. So anyway, there's a whole raft of things that are wrapped around this, but that's where you'll find us. But you'll also find us through the Next Humanity social pages, and if you come to the site and sign up for the newsletter, then we'll keep you informed of all kinds of things, give you some behind the scenes, give you some insights to the different topics, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'll have that in the narrative when I post the video. I'll have
Great.
it. And I think a lot of people that are in the consciousness and frequencies, energy, and musicians, I think they'd be interested in this show. So it all ties together there. And also, we can't exclude, Jesus or the Lord. It's involved in all of this, and actually gives us the inspiration to do all what we do. And Bill Mullin, I want to thank you very much for being on the show. I enjoyed our conversation, especially being fellow musicians. We have this little we have a different type of communications, I guess, when it comes to musicians. We understand each other as far as that level is concerned. I want to thank you, Bill Mullin, and thank you for listening to Dave Emmons and the Strange Reality. And it was just reality today. And I will change up my topics, and I'll probably also change my backdrop every once in a while in order to, get along with the topic, or kind of mesh with this topic. Thank you, Bill Mullin, and
the gratitude is mutual, and I thank your audience for sticking in here with us. And I pray they have insights and get perspective. Yeah.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for listening and watching. Hope you enjoy the show.